Hello, my name is Peter Cho. I am one of the jazz piano instructors here at the Louis Armstrong Summer Jazz Camp, and I've been involved with the camp for a little bit over 10 years and have certainly enjoyed my experience here. I think jazz camp is very important because what we're doing is we're preserving the art form of jazz here in New Orleans, and we're allowing the citizens of New Orleans to partake in this creative process. One thing that we take for granted is that this music has always been here. With all of the issues that we have in the economy, with all the issues that we have just with world strife and everything else that's happening, we're at a risk of losing this art form that we call jazz, and it's something that's very important to us here in New Orleans, not just from a cultural standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint too. One thing our governor is very fond of saying is, or our former lieutenant governor that is, was very fond of saying, is that music is part of the cultural economy, and it's part of how we as Louisianians make a living, and it's a large part of that economy. And I think that what we're doing is we're not only training students to carry on the legacy of jazz, but what we're also doing is we're training our students to be employed in the workforce. We're training our students to make sure that they have an employable skill, and that all of this learning hopefully will transcend just the playing of their instrument, whether it's piano or bass or a horn, but really help them with life skills as well. I think that we have both types of students. We have students that do intend on pursuing this as a career in the future, either because their parents or their relatives are musicians, or they really like the idea of possibly being a professional musician. We also have those that think that the camp is a good idea over the summer. Maybe they can learn something that's a little different from what they're normally used to. One of the most important things that we do teach here, of course, and I think that many of the other professors here as well, certainly Mr. Jordan would probably attest to this, is that what we're doing is we're teaching fundamentals and we're teaching discipline in what we do. In order to play this style of music, you cannot fake it. You have to have your fundamentals down absolutely straight. It's like building a house. If you don't have a solid foundation, you can't build on top of that, and that's not something that comes overnight. And what a lot of students are finding out is that they have to work at this. They have to practice. They can't just come to the camp and absorb everything and then expect to go home and sleep, and then the next night come in and oh look, I'm this much better. It takes constant work. But I think that what this teaches is, and music in general, music education in general teaches our students, teaches them discipline. It teaches them how to work with each other. And it also teaches them how to deal with adversity. And that's something that is very important, because not many of our students nowadays that are going through the public school systems or even the private school systems really understand what to do when confronted with an issue or with a problem. And what we try to show them is that when a roadblock appears in their way, perhaps they can look at that in a different way. Instead of trying to hit something head on or just saying, I'm stopping, maybe they can pause a little bit and say, aha, what is this problem and how can I get around this problem? And just the learning of music allows us to develop those skills, and it allows our students to actually step back a little bit and be reflective of what it is that they're actually doing. And that's something that does not go on enough. You know, we're always teaching you have to read, you have to write, you have to be able to do mathematics, but we're not taught how to use all of that in our daily lives. And I think that's the one thing that music can do, is it can bridge that gap and actually show the students, well, I can use these skills tangibly outside of picking up my horn. Not every person that comes here is going to be a musician, and even less so a jazz musician. However, jazz musicians cannot survive simply by saying, okay, I'm going to play only this music and then I'm going to sell my records and I'm going to play these gigs. The audience is going to dwindle, and unless we actually develop an audience. And I actually see most of the students here that come through here as not just aficionados of the music, but, if you will, practitioners to a certain extent, not professionals, but those that can enjoy the music on a much deeper level than just putting on a record of, let's say, John Coltrane and saying, okay, that's interesting. They might put on that same record and go, okay, I know the chord changes to this, and I know what John Coltrane is doing, or I know what McCoy Tyner is doing. And just developing that and developing the ear for this type of music that we play is so important, because unless we cultivate an audience, that audience is going to die off. And once that audience dies off, we have nobody to play to, and what we're doing is we're cutting our economic future and our base off. So the cultivation, if you will, of our audience as we teach professionals for the next generations are, I believe, one and the same goal. And certainly in all of our schools, in all of our programs in secondary, post-secondary, and higher education, I think that's the ultimate goal of music programs, is to both create future musicians, future teachers, but more importantly, to create a sustainable audience for what we have to deliver in the future. I'll say this, I think that I've been a teacher at heart for most of my life, and I think we as musicians are always teachers. We want to give back. There's so many musicians that I have learned from. And in this camp, this is the wonderful thing for me every year. Jermaine Basil. I remember going to see Jermaine when I first came to town. I couldn't play Mary Had a Little Lamb without stopping when I first started. And here's Jermaine, who was willing to let us not only come to her gigs, but to sit in and learn. And wonderful piano player Ed Frank, years ago, he's since passed away, one of my mentors. New Orleans provided that at that time to give us the ability to actually learn by doing, and having a mentor that showed us how important this music is. And I think that we owe it to the future generations to make sure that once we are finished with this music, once we're gone, that they're able to take this music wherever that music needs to be taken, but they have the history of the music, they have the legacy of it, but that they're trained in the way that we were trained. And that is the actual practical, if you will. It's almost like the old trades where you have a master and an apprentice, but that is how you learn it. It's a craft, and it's not something that is very easily taught in, let's say, an academic environment, because certainly you can teach somebody to play certain scales over certain chords over certain things. The music tends to be very sterile when you do that. But I have to say that the reason I joined this camp was it was the ability to give back to the young people of New Orleans all that the music has given me, and also to be able to show them that the skills that they learn here at Jazz Camp can take them further than just playing their horn, that it can take them and give them, if you will, the spirit to become lifelong learners and to move ahead in life, become contributors to our society rather than those that need to take from society. And I think ultimately, as a musician and as an educator, that's one of my core goals, is something that I hope to do, is to make sure to leave this place better than when I found it. And certainly with musical skills in students, that was my main reason for coming to camp. And to be able to hang out with you guys and be able to hang out with all of the fantastic musicians here who have, you guys are my second family. So that's, yeah. I think it's very important. I think that the world knows jazz through Louis Armstrong. He was sort of the spokesperson for this music. He wasn't the only one that did it, but he was the face and the persona of this music to so much of the world. And I think that to have a camp named after him, and named after the music, and named after what he was able to do with the music, and how he was able to inspire so many musicians, I think that's very important. And I think that our alliances, if you will, with a lot of the formal Louis Armstrong organizations around the country is also very important, because altogether we cannot do this alone. Certainly we don't have the resources or the manpower to carry that on. But hopefully through this organization, and especially our ties with other organizations with Louis Armstrong as our focus, hopefully we can bring all of our resources together to make sure and ensure that this music continues. I'll say this, it's been interesting. I did not know how it would work, primarily because we're a little bit more decentralized here on a college campus. What I'm finding is that, I don't know, maybe it is the environment. Most of our students that we have this year are very well behaved, and they aren't running up and down the halls as much as usual. And they're very much, I think, rising to the occasion that, hey, we're actually on a college campus, and I think that it's rubbed off on them. I will say this, as an educator and as a college educator, I'm very happy that we're on a college campus, if no more than to introduce to our students that, you know what, this is a college. It's nothing that's scary. It's nothing that is imposing. It's just a building. But yet it's introducing them to the possibility that higher education exists, and to the possibility that, guess what, you very well may and should have the opportunity to pursue this should you want to. And so it opens this up as an experience to them, so that they're actually stepping foot on a college campus, and perhaps down the road that might, tweak something in here that says, you know what, let me look into that. And anything that we can do to foster access to higher education, again, that's one of my passions. So I'm very happy that we're here, and so far I think that it's worked out very well.
Good.
I'll say this, I think we have some of the best students anywhere, regardless of their background, regardless of their life histories. I mean, the students that we have here, they are the future of this music, and they're the ones that are going to take this music to that next level and make sure that it survives in whatever incarnation that it is. But I think that it is so ultimately important that our students, especially here in New Orleans, have the arts as part of their actual schooling and curriculum. Everybody likes to say research has shown that music or the arts are good. But again, we're always the first, if you will, subjects that are cut whenever there are budget cuts and things like that. And if you really take a look at it, does it make fiscal sense or financial sense to be taking the skills away from people that can give them productive lives later, rather than putting the money into some other things and cutting these skills so when students actually get out, they don't have a job to fall back upon, and they don't have those skills that they need to continue to move forward. Certainly that's something that I'm very passionate about. I really believe that the arts enable us to deliver those skills to students, to make them successful, whether they're doctors, whether they're lawyers, or whatever profession they go in, that the actual discipline that it takes and the actual skills that they learn by participating in a program are so much more than just, oh, I'm learning how to read music, oh, I'm learning how to play a song, I'm learning how to do this. I mean, these are actual tangible life skills that they're learning. And unfortunately, I think that's one of the issues that we face nowadays, is that in an environment of dwindling resources, we're always some of the first to be cut, because a lot of persons do not see the actual benefit of the skills that we learn, because they'd rather be able to have a very quantitative thing. Okay, be able to say, what is 1 + 1? Show this skill, show this skill. But to actually be able to turn those into life skills are something that many other subjects are not as readily able to do than music. And that's one thing that I certainly would really like to stress, is that I think that this camp is extremely important, and I think that music education, or education in the arts in general, is so important because it does offer those life skills that students are not getting